Welcome. I'm Gerry Henwood, and today, welcome to Let's Talk About It. My guest today is Scott Zelov, who is a Lower Merion Township Commissioner. And the topic for today is something that has been a hot topic for a long time, and it's about billboards that are being proposed to be placed in our township, which would dramatically affect the township. So today we're going to hear about the history of this conflict, what public reaction to it is, what the reasons for the reaction, also what the current legal status of this conflict is. So, Mr. Zelov, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you, Gerry. I'm delighted to be here.
Well, in the information that I've read, this conflict has been going on for approximately 10 years. Could you tell us who is in back of it, how it got started, and what the progression of the conflict has been?
I'm happy to. So this does go back perhaps 11 years to 2009, when a billboard company proposed 4 billboards in Haverford Township. And 2 of those billboards are proposed right on the line between Haverford Township and Lower Merion Township in Bryn Mawr. So think of the Bryn Mawr Acme, that new Acme at the corner of Penswood and Lancaster Avenue in Bryn Mawr. Right across the street is Haverford Township, and they've proposed a highway-sized billboard at the corner of Penn Road and Lancaster Avenue above the building that has a retail on the first floor and apartments on the second floor. And then at the other end of the block, which is Old Lancaster Road and Lancaster Avenue, same thing, a 2-story building. They proposed a highway-sized billboard in that location. They also proposed 2 billboards on Westchester Pike in Havertown. One of them is in the further to the east, near the Manoa Shopping Center, and then one is closer to the intersection with the Blue Route above the car wash. And so this company had to get relief from the Haverford Township Zoning Hearing Board because the township denied the proposals back in 2009. And so with that denial, their next remedy is the Zoning Hearing Board. There were 3 years of hearings in front of the Haverford Township Zoning Hearing Board. There was so much interest from the community, translation, so much opposition from the community, that the meetings couldn't be held in the normal township meeting room, which is, holds 50 or 100 people. They held them at Linwood Elementary School in the auditorium, where they can hold hundreds of people. And that auditorium at times was full with residents who came to hear those hearings. And in a zoning hearing board proceeding in a township, there's opportunity for public comment. And so 3 years of hearings, almost 30 hearings over that period of time, public comment at just about every meeting, and witnesses put on by the billboard company and the Haverford Township solicitor represented the township and represented the township in their opposition to the billboard proposal, and he was successful. After those 3 years of hearings, the Zoning Hearing Board prepared a extensive written opinion in which they point by point explained their reasons for denial of the proposal for all 4 of those billboards.
And may I interrupt you at this point? The denial, I assume, was based on some of the issues that the public brought out that included things like possible danger should a billboard fall, traffic patterns that would these billboards would distract motorists and possibly cause problems. I read one article where a mother was voicing her fear that her child would have to cross the street to go to Good Mother of Counsel, I believe, school there, right opposite the Acme, and was concerned about the safety of the children crossing at that intersection if motorists were looking at billboards. So now there were other issues I recall too about how research was presented by a realtor that any community in which these billboards are placed, the housing begins to lose value. So there are lots and lots of reasons why the residents of the communities would be opposed to this. So having illuminated our viewers as to what some of the concerns were, if you would be so kind as to now keep proceeding with the legal actions that are being taken from now the zoning that you last mentioned.
Sure. And Gerry, all those reasons that you just went through are all the reasons that were presented by the Haverford Township attorney, and there were more. He showed evidence of billboards falling because of structural defects, high wind, and so can you imagine a billboard in our suburban community in Bryn Mawr that falls over? That was one of the arguments. There's a lot of pedestrian activity in Bryn Mawr. It's a main street corridor. Not only children walking to school, but there's now a children's hospital satellite location next to the Acme. On the other side of Lancaster Avenue, behind the buildings where they would put the billboards, is a residential street. Across the street from that small neighborhood is a park, the polo field, a large community park. Of course, there's the church. So this is a community. This is a main street. This is suburbia. This is neighborhoods. This is where people live and work, and not a place for a highway-sized billboard. But going back to that 3 years of the zoning hearing board, excuse me for a moment. So the zoning hearing board laid out their very specific reasons for denial, and so the billboard company appealed, which they have the right to do. So their appeal goes to the county court. It's Delaware County, so they appeal to the court, and then the Delaware County Court upheld the denial of the zoning hearing board. That took some time, a year or two. The billboard company appealed yet again, which they have the right to do. The next step in the appellate process is the Commonwealth Court, which is a statewide court that hears appeals from county courts around Pennsylvania. So the Commonwealth Court said that Haverford Township needs to have an ordinance that does allow outdoor off-premise advertising somewhere. So they sent it back to the county court. Now, the category, we call them billboards, but the legal category is off-premise signs or outdoor signs. And so the Commonwealth Court did not say, pick one of those 4 sites, or they have the right to any of those 4 sites. They don't, but they said, Haverford Township, you need to come up with a location somewhere to allow this use of off-premise advertising. And so that was in 2014. So here we are, almost 6 years later, and it's now back to the Delaware County Court. There was no activity in this case for those many years. And so it has come back to the court now before a judge in Delaware County Court, Judge Angelos. And so he then is conducting a hearing. So maybe you call it a bench trial. There's no jury. It's a multi-day hearing that is now underway. In fact, there's been 2 days of hearings.
Well, let me ask you this. Given the history that you've just outlined, hiatus occurring over the course of some years,
Yes.
why does this company, and I have my own suspicions, why does this company keep coming back, keep coming back? My only conclusion that it's all about money.
Of course it is. Billboard companies are relentless. There must be tremendous money and value in obtaining the approval to put up a billboard in a densely populated community like Haverford Township, Lower Merion Township, Radnor Township, Marple Township. And so they are continually pushing. And even though there was this delay of so many years, the case is still alive. And this company has been pursuing billboards in suburban communities all over the region. Some communities have been willing to accept them, and others have not. There are some new billboards in Center City, Philadelphia, that the city's been willing to grant approval to, and some other townships around in the greater suburbs have been willing to do so, but the townships here that we've been talking about are not willing. And so the battle continues. And so the hearing now in media in Delaware County Court is as I said, is underway. There's been 2 hearings, and then it's not a jury trial, so the judge can schedule it based on his availability. And so there's been the 2 hearings, and then there will be 2 more, there will be 3 more scheduled later in February, starting back again on February 20th, and then February 24th and 25th. So those 3 days have been recently announced as the days for the hearing to continue. And it's a hearing similar to the Zoning Hearing Board, in which each side brings their experts who testify and then are cross-examined by the other side. So it's and there's a recording of this proceeding, and in the end, there'll be a mountain of evidence, and the judge will decide. And we don't know what the judge will decide. But what we do know is that there's tremendous community opposition to the prospect of enormous billboards in our suburban communities and on our suburban roads.
Well, first of all, I've been a Lower Merion resident since 1985, and when I moved here, Lower Merion was still in its post-World War II traditional mode. There had been very little development. It seemed like there couldn't be a lot of development because at that time, the only parcel of land that was available for development was on Penn Road, which now contains that large, right in back of the the Wynwood train station. I forget the name of the complex, but like 350 units have been built there.
Yes.
But since then, that density has also been supplemented by the ripping down of some mansions, some older buildings, where condominiums are now being built. So the nature of the township, as I look back on my 35 years here, has changed dramatically in the past several years. And to contemplate now billboards being put up in historical areas of our communities is just unfathomable to me, because could you comment on whether you're aware, would these billboards be static advertisements, or or would they be these rotating advertisements that maybe would be even illuminated with LED lighting?
So, Gerry, you're absolutely right how Lower Merion Township has evolved and is evolving. These billboards, would they be static or would they be digital? It's not clear. In the testimony recently, the billboard company has referred to them as static billboards. But so many new billboards that we see when we're on the highway are digital. And so it's hard to imagine that there won't be a significant push that if the unfathomable occurs, which is a billboard is approved, that they would push for it to be digital, which is brings up a whole nother set of issues. Because a digital billboard is lit and it changes constantly, and it's lit 24/7. And what a enormous impact that would have. And so it's just not clear whether the billboard company is asking for that now or will push for that in the future. And you mentioned a moment ago about impact on the historic neighborhoods and districts in Lower Merion Township. Another reason legally to oppose this billboard in Bryn Mawr is that the Haverford Station Historic District, which has been designated by the township some years ago, is right on the other side of Mother of Good Counsel Church. And so if you're in that historic district, you'd be able to see that billboard at the corner of Penn Road and Lancaster Avenue. In fact, if you're at the church and you're coming out the front door of the church onto the plaza that's in front of the church along Pennswood Road, all you have to do is look up and to your left, and you would see this enormous billboard. And of course, there aren't restrictions on the content of billboards. So, you can use your imagination to think about what products or services could be advertised on a billboard.
Now, do you happen to know why these particular sites were chosen by the company? For example, on top of the Acme there, would the Acme benefit financially in any way by that billboard being on top of their building, as well as the billboard across the street and down from it a block?
No. So there is no proposal to place a billboard at the Acme site.
I see.
The proposals are for 2 billboards across Lancaster Avenue from the Acme. So the Acme's between the Acme and the Children's Hospital satellite location, that's a block.
Right.
So across Lancaster Avenue, at either end of the block is where the 2 billboards are proposed.
I see.
Those buildings, as I said, they're first floor retail, second floor apartments. And they're older buildings that have been in the Bryn Mawr Business District for a long, long time. The owners of those buildings have entered into leases with the billboard company. Those leases were entered into going back to the original proposal 10 or 11 years ago. And they are 30-year leases. And we know this because they've had to produce those leases as part of this legal proceeding. And so the company, the owner, will be paid by the billboard company if the billboards are approved. And what's proposed is a enormous pole. It's called a monopole that would be installed, and the billboard would be mounted to the pole that is over the roof of these buildings. The billboard wouldn't be mounted to the roof of the buildings, but be on a 3 or 4 foot diameter pole that would be come up and then bend over the roof of the building on either end. And there are 2 different leases, 2 different owners, because they're those buildings are not owned by the same individual or same company. And so the owners of those buildings would be the beneficiaries of the lease payments from the billboard company.
Well, that makes me wonder, how did this company contact? How did they must have decided who they were going to approach even before they found out whether or not they could really legally erect these billboards and get these people to sign these leases.
Sure.
So that implies the resources that this company has. And do you know anything about that? I know they're supposedly a very wealthy company.
I think they're a very successful company. They're a privately owned company, and they've got. I think they said the other day in the hearing they've got 30 or 35 employees, and as I said, they've got 35 or so off-premise outdoor signs and billboards around the region. Some of those billboards have been sold to larger companies who are in the outdoor advertising business for millions. This is a big business, and so they're, as I said a moment ago, that's why they're willing to take the time and incur the legal cost and the wrath of the community to pursue approvals for billboard sites.
Well, when you mentioned their ability to pursue this because of the money in back of them, what has this been costing our townships to fight them? And where is that money coming out of taxpayer coffers?
It is.
Oh.
So in Haverford Township, the solicitor is representing the township, and he's an independent attorney, and so his fees are being paid for by that township. In the case of Lower Merion Township, so the billboard proposal is not in Lower Merion Township, and is not the decision is not a Lower Merion Township decision, but because the proposal is right on the border and would have enormous impact in Lower Merion Township, in addition to the impact in Haverford Township, Lower Merion has its own attorney in these proceedings, working closely with the lawyer for Haverford Township. And so the Lower Merion attorney is being paid out of the Lower Merion budget, which is funded by the Lower Merion taxpayers. The Haverford Township Zoning Hearing Board is also represented because they made the decision and their decision has been appealed and challenged, so they have an attorney. And there's a small group of residents who also have engaged an attorney, but their focus is on the proposal for billboards on Westchester Pike in Havertown. And so, but there is a cost to the taxpayers to oppose these proposals.
In reading about this and hearing from you a more detailed accounting of what's been going on, I'm really impressed, first of all, by the ability of the residents to continue their pressure not to have these billboards, number one. On the other hand, the persistence of this company is amazing to me, because I just recently read about the old Ardmore Theater, that a developer wanted to put up a seven-building condominium and
Seven-story.
Seven-story. Keep the facade, and residents were opposed to that. And that looks like it's fallen through, unless that developer comes back and challenges again.
Which could happen.
Yes, yes. So let me ask you this. With the various interests that are stepping forward to change the tone of our townships, is there anything that you could recommend to our viewers about how they could participate if they would like to join the oppositional chorus?
Yes, there are, in fact, two ways to do so. There's an online petition that's been prepared and being circulated by the Brynford Civic Association. So that's Bryn, F-O-R-D, BrinfordCivic.org. They have an online petition that has over 4,000 names after being up for a week or so. And so, and then there was a protest arranged by members of the community on Martin Luther King Day, because a lot of people were not working that day. And it was in the afternoon, and it was at the site on Lancaster Avenue. And it was a cold day, it's January. And there were 80, 90 people there with signs that they made, and they were protesting, and of course drivers were supporting, honking as they went by. And so that got some TV coverage and got some coverage in the local media. And so that may occur again. That was put together by the Brinford Civic Association, I believe. And then the court proceeding is open to the public. Now, the public cannot comment or speak at the hearing. It's very different from a zoning hearing board where public comment is part of every proceeding. A court proceeding in the county court, there is no public comment, but for members of the public and the community to attend and see what's going on and to let the judge know that there's a lot of community opposition and interest in this proceeding. And there's been a lot of media coverage. We had an informational meeting earlier in January for residents of Bryn Mawr, and it included the Brinford Civic, it included the Haverford Civic, which is in Lower Merion, also included the Bryn Mawr Civic, which is in Lower Merion. So 3 civic associations that are Haverford Township, Lower Merion Township, and don't get together very often, are all getting together on this issue and communicating with their members. And at that meeting, there was a presentation about the history of this issue, some of the reasons why billboards are a terrible idea for our suburban community. And there was opportunity for Q&A, and there were many residents who asked good questions and had suggestions. That meeting was arranged with Haverford Township Commissioner Andy Lewis, who is, his district borders my district in Lower Merion, and Andy and I are working very closely, along with Mario Oliva, who is another Haverford Township Commissioner, and Kevin McCluskey, who's a Haverford Township Commissioner. They're all very supportive, of course, of this effort to oppose.
Scott, I'm going to have to interrupt you a moment.
Sure.
Because our time is running out. But I hope you, the viewers, have enjoyed the presentation and can, in some way, determine how you can oppose these billboards that the township commissioners have been so laboriously working to avoid being placed in our township. And I want to thank you, Scott, for joining us today.
Thank you, Gerry.
And we'll see you next time. Thank you. Have a good day.